you have been told you need a full year of income saved before you are allowed to feel safe. And that idea is the exact reason your emergency fund has never gotten off the ground. Let me correct it now. The number you actually need is far smaller than the one keeping you frozen. And on a $50,000 salary, you can reach it faster than people earning double who still could not cover one broken transmission. The person I watched do it is named Kiara, and 3 years before her fund could cover a full year of expenses, she was saving nothing at all. She was doing what a lot of people on a modest salary quietly do: survive the month and hope nothing important breaks before the next one. Her turning point came from a single sentence: an emergency fund is not a year of your income, it is a year of your expenses. And those two numbers sit much further apart than almost anyone assumes. When people hear a full year of savings, they hear a full year of salary and their brain slams the door shut. On $50,000 a year, stacking up another $50,000 feels absurd. But Kiara's real target was never $50,000, her rent, groceries, insurance, and utilities. The true cost of keeping her life running came out to roughly $2,500 a month. 12 months of that is $30,000. A serious number, but a completely different climb from $50,000. It is worth knowing why she aimed for a full year instead of the usual 3 to 6 months. She had a single income with no partner's paycheck to catch her, worked in a field where layoffs came in waves, and had spent years carrying a low, permanent hum of money anxiety. A full year was not overkill for her situation. It was the amount that let her breathe. If your life has more built-in stability, 6 months may feel completely secure. The point is choosing a number based on your real life, not a rule of thumb. Before we get into where the money came from, be honest about how little of a $50,000 salary actually reaches your hands. Social Security and Medicare skim about $3,800. Off the top, federal income tax pulls out roughly another $3,800, and state tax can take more. What Kiara actually took home was around $42,000 a year, close to $3,500 a month, to run a life that cost her $2,500, roughly $1,000. Every month was not actually spoken for. For a lot of people, that leftover thousand simply evaporates. A little more takeout here, a small upgrade there, a subscription forgotten. Kiara's whole plan was to stop letting that $1,000 disappear and give it a job instead. The first real work was finding her true survival number. Kiara pulled 3 months of bank statements and sorted every expense into 2 buckets. The first was survival: rent, basic groceries, gas, insurance, electricity, the phone she needed for work. The second was everything else: restaurant meals, impulse orders, streaming services she barely watched. Only the first bucket feeds your emergency number, because in a real emergency, the second bucket disappears on its own anyway. When Kiara separated survival from comfort, her survival number came out lower than she had guessed. That gap between what her life costs and what her survival costs was money she had spent years treating as untouchable for no real reason. Try the same 2-bucket sort on your own last 3 months of statements. Most people are shocked at how much smaller their survival number is than their spending number. One important detour: if you are carrying high-interest debt, especially credit cards, the full year does not come first. Debt like that grows faster than any savings account can keep up with. The order that works is a small starter buffer, then attacking the high-interest debt with everything you have, and only once that is gone, circling back to build the full year. Speaking of that starter buffer, before chasing a full year of anything, Kiara built a tiny cushion first. Just $1,000 tucked into a separate place, doing nothing but waiting. A striking share of Americans could not cover a $1,000 surprise without reaching for a credit card. And once that buffer sits at zero, every flat tire turns straight into debt that charges interest and devours savings faster than you can build them. That first $1,000 quietly turns a crisis into an inconvenience, and it was the most important amount in the entire plan. Without it, a person hit by a $500 surprise reaches for a card at 20% interest or a payday loan. Minimum payments start eating next month's budget, and the next surprise sends them right back to the card. That is the debt spiral, and it has very little to do with being bad with money. So where does a person on a modest salary find enough room to bank a whole year? It came from 4 places. The biggest lever was housing. Kiara kept her rent well under the usual guideline, choosing a smaller place with a roommate instead of the solo apartment her income could technically stretch to, saving roughly $500 a month or $6,000 a year. Her second lever was the car, a paid-off and glamorous used car instead of rolling trade-ins every few years, keeping a few $100s a month out of a car company's pocket. Food was the third lever, cooking far more than ordering out, since $12 in groceries stretches across several meals, while $12 to a delivery app feeds you once. The fourth lever was subscription and spending creep, the forgotten subscriptions and small upgrades that quietly stack up. Kiara audited hers and found close to $150 a month bleeding out through channels she had stopped noticing. Add those 4 levers together and $1,000 a month she needed stops looking like a fantasy and starts looking like arithmetic. She also gave herself a jolt of early momentum, a weekend selling things she no longer used, put a few $100s into the starter buffer almost overnight, and her tax refund went straight into the fund instead of stopping in her checking account. Windfalls, a refund, a bonus, a birthday check are money your future self will barely miss. Now hold Kiara up against a coworker earning $90,000. Call her Colette. Colette was not reckless in any way a stranger would notice. She simply let her spending rise to meet every raise. A bigger apartment, a newer car, nicer everything. On paper, she was the office success story. Underneath, she was setting aside only about 5% of her income, roughly $375 a month, while Kiara, earning almost half of what she did, was quietly moving close to $800 a month into savings. The lower earner was outsaving the higher earner by more than 2 to 1. And nobody knew, because saving stays invisible from the outside. That is lifestyle creep. It never feels like a decision. A raise arrives and spending silently expands to swallow it. Kiara did the opposite. The one time her pay went up, she did not touch her spending. She simply raised the amount moving into savings. Maybe $1,000 a month. Of spare room sounds like fantasy on your budget. And you might be right. What matters more than the pace is that the transfer exists at all and refuses to stop. If the most you can move is $200 a month, this exact plan still works. It just takes longer. Someone saving $200 a month is building the identical habit and the identical calm Kiara ended up with. They simply arrive a couple of seasons later. Actually keeping the money is a different battle than finding it. And this is where willpower quietly fails almost everyone. Kiara did not save whatever was left over at the end of the month, because there is never anything left. She flipped the order. On payday, a fixed amount moved automatically into a separate savings account before she could touch it. The money she lived on became whatever remained after saving, never the reverse. The separate account matters too. An emergency fund living in your everyday. Checking account stops being an emergency fund and becomes just another number you rationalize away. Kiara kept hers at a different bank entirely, with a day or 2 of delay to move it back. Just enough friction that a late night craving could never reach it. Where you park it matters as well. The average traditional savings account pays less than half of 1%. Leave $30,000 there and it earns around $117 a year. A good high-yield savings account, equally safe and insured up to $250,000 per person, has been paying near 4%, turning that same $30,000 into roughly $1,200 a year, a difference of over $1,000 annually for doing nothing but keeping your money in a smarter spot. Once Kiara's fund was full, it was throwing off close to $100 a month on its own. Her savings had started saving for her. The harder part, once the fund exists, is defending it against constant, low pressure to spend it. Kiara answered that with a single rule. A true emergency has to be urgent, necessary, and unexpected. All 3 at once. Predictable costs like a car registration or the holidays belong in a separate sinking fund you feed a little each month, not the emergency fund. A funded health savings account, if your plan qualifies, can also absorb medical surprises without ever touching the main reserve. The mistakes that quietly wreck emergency funds. Saving with no defined target. Leaving the money in checking where it blends into everyday spending. Chasing bigger returns by investing it in the market, where it could lose 20%, right when you need it. And the slow raid. Treating the fund like a slush account for wants dressed up as needs. None of this happened quickly. Kiara's full year took a little over 3 years to build. In the first month, she had her starter 1,000. And for the first time, a surprise bill did not send her spiraling. By 3 months, she could absorb most ordinary disasters. By 6 months, she had crossed into territory most households never reach. Past the 2-year mark, saving stopped feeling like sacrifice and started feeling like the account was pulling her forward on its own, especially once the interest was chipping in its own $100 a month. She never white-knuckled her way through it. The automation carried her, running quietly in the background like rent or a phone bill, whether or not she felt motivated on any given day. She also tracked the balance on a simple chart and marked milestones. The month it covered 1 full month of expenses, the 3-month mark, the day it crossed half a year. Small private celebrations that gave the long invisible middle some texture. So what does a full year actually buy someone earning $50,000? Go back to the car that died in the dead of winter. For most people in Kiara's office, that would have meant a credit card and months of interest. For Kiara, it meant 1 afternoon and a slightly smaller number in an account built for exactly that moment. Imagine the same story with a job instead of a car. A round of layoffs, and Kiara's name is on the list. For someone with no cushion, that is a 5-alarm fire. For Kiara, it is a serious problem, not a catastrophe, because she has 12 months of runway. Time to hold out for the right role instead of grabbing the first desperate offer, and negotiate from calm instead of panic. A person who can afford to walk away almost always gets the better deal. There is a quieter dividend, too. People with a real cushion sleep differently. The low background static of money worrying goes quiet. And a startling share of relationship. Arguments are really arguments about money. And the fear underneath it. A funded year does not only let you say no to disaster. It lets you say yes to opportunity, going back to school. Taking a lower-paying job with a brighter future. Moving for something worth moving for. Finally starting the thing on the side you always talked about. Fear says no to all of that by default. A year of runway is what finally lets a person seriously consider saying yes. Once that full year is sitting there, funded and safe and reassuringly boring, a new question shows up. What do you do with a large amount of money you are almost certainly never going to touch? You need it liquid and safe, so it cannot go anywhere risky. Yet leaving every dollar in plain cash forever means slowly losing ground to rising prices. The calmest first step through that tension has nothing to do with the stock market. It runs through savings bonds and Treasury bonds backed by the government, paying a little over 4% right now, where your money stays secure but finally keeps pace instead of quietly shrinking. It is the least glamorous corner of investing. And that is exactly why it is the right place to begin. Turning a boring, rock-solid foundation into an actual head start on retirement.